Matthew chapter 20, verses 24 through 28. It's Matthew chapter 20, 24 through 28. If you're using the Pew Bible, that is page 981. And hearing this, the 10 became indignant with the two brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great men exercise authority over them. It is not this way among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to become first among you shall be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and give his life a ransom for many."
You guys are probably saying, man, you've got to hear this guy one more time. But again, I'm super thankful to be with y'all. Mark was saying when we were talking, I love singing with these guys. And while being here, it's so good to sing with y'all. You guys all sing together. You sing with enthusiasm because we know we're singing to the Lord. And what a blessing that is. This morning, I would like to talk about, to finish off the youth forum and being with y'all, faithfulness through service. And as we just finished seeing in Matthew chapter 20, and if you can go back there, starting in 20, it says, "Then the mother of the son of Zebedee came to Jesus with her sons, bowing down and making request of him. And he said to her, 'What do you wish?' She said to him, 'Command that in your kingdom these two sons of mine may sit one to your right and one to your left.' But Jesus answered, 'You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink?' They said to him, 'We are able.' He said to them, 'My cup you shall drink, but to sit on my right and on my left, this is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared by my Father.'" And then the young man came up and read the rest of it. And we see that the mother of the son of Zebedee came to Jesus and said, "Hey, I want something from you. I want my two sons, one to sit to my left and one to sit to my right." And when the other disciples heard this, they started to be like, "What's going on here?" And Jesus says, "Hey, the last shall be first. The master's not greater than his servant." And he says about himself in verse 28, "Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." Jesus didn't come to the earth to be served, but to serve. And what I want to do this morning is I want to look at John chapter 13, and I want to look at an instance where Jesus was serving others, and I want to take our applications from that chapter. So what I want to do, and it's going to be a little bit of a long reading, but what we're going to do is we're going to read John chapter 13, 1 through 17. It's going to be on the screen so we can all follow along. So John chapter 13, starting in verse 1. And it says like this: "Now, before the feast of the Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, the devil having already put in the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come forth from God and was going back to God, got up from supper and laid aside his garments, and taking a towel, he girded himself. Then he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet, and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. So he came to Simon Peter. He said to him, 'Lord, do you wash my feet?' Jesus answered and said to him, 'What I do you shall not realize now, but you will understand hereafter.' Peter said to him, 'Never shall you wash my feet.' Jesus answered him, 'If I do not wash you, you have no part with me.' Simon Peter said to him, 'Lord, then wash not only my feet, but also my hands and my head.' Jesus said to him, 'He who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew the one who was betraying him. For this reason, he said, not all of you are clean. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and reclined at the table again, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so am I. If I then, the Lord and the teacher, washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you also should do as I did to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is not greater than his master, nor is one who is sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. We see here that Jesus, it's a Passover, we're sitting at the table for supper, and he says to himself, you know what? I'm going to stand up and I'm going to wash the feet of my disciples. So he gets up from the table, and he takes off his outer garment, and he girds himself. He fills, I'm going to say, a bowl or a basin of water, and he gets on his knees, and he starts to clean the disciples' feet. And I can imagine that was probably like a disgusting job. But he did it anyways. Then he goes and he sits down and says, hey, you guys call me master, and look what I've just done. I know you guys don't understand this now, he tells Peter. But the things that I have done, you guys should also be doing. The first thing that we see that Jesus shows us, faithfulness in service, even when he didn't receive an earthly reward or praise. So imagine, Jesus gets up by his own self. He wasn't told to go do it. He just gets up and he starts to wash his disciples' feet. I forgot his name, Kenneth or one of the little kids. I completely forgot his name now. But yesterday after we were here, his mom and his sister and him, he's 10 years old, they were here. Dane is his name. There you go. Thank you, Mark. Dane. He was here, and I was like, you know, Mark, I just got to use the bathroom really quickly. And I go into the bathroom, to the men's bathroom, and there's Dane, putting in the tissue papers and putting the toilet papers in there. I'm pretty sure no one says, hey, Dane, great job for doing that stuff. But why does he do it? Because he wants to serve. He's not serving to get an earthly reward. He's not serving to get praise. What a great job, Dane. He's doing it because he wants to serve others. In these little things that he's doing, he's serving the church. We see that Jesus did the same thing. Jesus wasn't expecting his disciples to say, hey, Jesus, thank you so much for washing my feet. My feet were really dirty, and thank you so much for doing that. Or he wasn't expecting something out of doing that. He just did it because he wanted to serve. We should be serving, not expecting something, may it be an earthly reward or praise. We should just be serving because that's what Jesus shows us to do, and we are faithful when we do it. In Luke chapter 6, verse 32, it says, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners in order to receive back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he himself is kind to ungrateful and evil men. We see here that Jesus is saying, hey, even sinners, even unbelievers give or serve other people expecting what? Expecting something in return. But for you, you shouldn't be thinking this way. You shouldn't be thinking, I'm going to serve this person because I'm going to get something in return. You know, if Mark says to me, hey, can you walk Teddy for me, his dog, And when you come back, I'm going to give you $20. How fast do you think I'm going to be walking Teddy? $20, I'm there. You know, I shouldn't be expecting anything in return if Mark tells me to walk Teddy. I should be serving just to show my faithfulness to the Lord. Sinners here in this text, unfaithful people, serve, give, lend to others, expecting what? Something in return. But us, on the other hand, Jesus shows us in this text, and also with what he did in John chapter 13, that we shouldn't be serving to expect something back, but we should be serving just to serve. And I love that. I love the way that Jesus not only tells his disciples, or with this example, hey, sinners do this to expect something back, but we should be doing this expecting nothing. He says it, and then in John chapter 13, what does he do? He shows it to them. And I love that. Jesus doesn't expect us to do anything that he hasn't already done. And it's just so mind-blowing to think about that. We should be faithful, we show our faithfulness to God by serving others, expecting nothing in return or not expecting any praise. The second thing that we can see is that Jesus shows us faithfulness by serving even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. We were talking, I'm pretty sure, back then when the slaves had people coming over, like if you were a slave and you worked in a house, and the owner of the house said, hey, we're gonna have 20 people coming over today. The slave was like, man, why is it that we're gonna have 20 people coming over today? He's probably thinking, man, I'm gonna have to wash 40 feet today. 20 times 2 is 40, if I'm not mistaken. And just think about that. How uncomfortable would that be? To 20 people coming over your house, and you have to go down on your knees and just start washing their feet. And again, I want you to think about this. Back then, there wasn't concrete roads the way we have concrete roads, and they didn't have closed shoes the way we have closed shoes. It was dusty roads. They had flip-flops or sandals, right? And imagine, their feet were probably disgusting. Yet, Jesus gets out of the table. The King of the universe gets up, gets on his knees, and cleans their feet. And that, I imagine, would have been so uncomfortable for Jesus to, the Most High God, to go there. But I want you to think about this as well. What was Jesus thinking about? Jesus was saying, my hour has come. He was about to die. And what was he thinking about? You know what? If I was in Jesus' position, I would have said, you know what? I'm not gonna put myself in this position. I'm about to die for these people. These people should be serving me. But what does Jesus do? He gets into an uncomfortable situation to be able to serve others. You know what's really uncomfortable? Coming down from heaven, being made fun of, getting beat for each and every one of us. That would have been uncomfortable. Being in a perfect place with God and coming down and lowering yourself to die for each and every one of us. And I know we read this, but in John chapter 19, verse 1, it says, Pilate then took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head, and put a purple robe on him, and they began to come up to him and say, Hail, King of the Jews, and gave him slaps in the face. How uncomfortable would have Jesus been in this position? But why did he do it? It was to serve you and me. He came down from heaven, a beautiful, perfect place, being with God, and came down to serve and to die for you and me. That would have been uncomfortable. Yet Jesus shows his faithfulness by serving in uncomfortable situations. It's easy to serve other people when things are comfortable, right? For example, if I'm outside and Mark tells me, hey, Wendel, I just broke my leg, and I need you to go to the pharmacy, and I need you to get my prescriptions. I'm like, Mark, I'm going to your house anyways, so that's cool. I'm going to go to the pharmacy for you. I'm going to pick it up. All right? Easy service right there. I'm going to his house. I'm able to pass by the pharmacy and get what he needs. But imagine I'm in New York, and Mark calls me. He's like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you come down to Kentucky, go to the pharmacy for me, pick up my prescription, and then bring it to my house? I'm like, Mark, are you crazy? Like, I'm all the way over here, and you're all the way over there. Why can't you have someone else do it? Why don't you have Teresa or Larry or this person or that person do it for you? It would be so much easier for you to do that. But we should not put a pretext, or we shouldn't be complaining when we're put into uncomfortable situations to serve. We're here to serve. Jesus has given us that example, that even when we're in uncomfortable situations, we should be serving. All right. The last thing that we can see in this text that Jesus shows us, Jesus shows us faithfulness by serving the unfaithful or people who don't deserve it. I think this is probably harder than serving when things are uncomfortable. You know why? We tend to, if people are good to us, we want to do good to them. But when people are bad to us, what do we say? You know what? You're not good to me, I'm not going to be good to you. And we're like, I'm not going to serve you. But Jesus, on the other hand, in this context, we see that Jesus is serving people that he knows are going to betray him. He knows they're going to leave him behind. He knows that they're going to deny him. Yet what does he do? He continues to serve. Judas Iscariot, in the text of John chapter 13, verse 2, it says, during supper, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him. And if we can continue to read down, and starting in verse 26, it says, Jesus then answered, that is the one for whom I shall dip the morsel and give it to him. So when he had dipped the morsel, he took and gave it to Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot. After the morsel, Satan then entered into him. Therefore, Jesus said to him, what you do, do quickly. Now no one of those reclining at the table knew for what purpose he had said this to him. For some were supposing, because Judas had the money box, that Jesus was saying to him, buy the things we have need of for the feast, or else that he should give something to the poor. So after receiving the morsel, he went out immediately, and it was night. We see here that Jesus knew that Judas was going to betray him. He even personally said, hey, whoever I dip this with and eat, this is the person that's going to betray me. And he knew that much before. But what does he continue to do? He still serves them. He still washes their feet, or his feet. And we see Peter. In Luke chapter 22, starting in verse 54, it says, having arrested him, they led him away and brought him to the house of the high priest. But Peter was following at a distance. After they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter was sitting among them. And a servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the firelight and looking intently at him, said, this man was with him too. But he denied it, saying, woman, I do not know him. A little later, another saw him and said, you are one of them too. But Peter said, man, I am not. After about an hour had passed, another man began to insist, saying, certainly this man also was with him, for he is a Galilean too. But Peter said, man, I do not know what you're talking about. Immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter, and Peter remembered the words of the Lord, how he had told him, before a rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went out and he wept bitterly. It's interesting. Peter, when Jesus was washing his feet, what was Peter saying? Jesus, not only my feet, but my hands and my head too. And then what does he do here? He betrays him, or he denies him, I'm sorry. And not once, but 3 times. He denies Jesus. I don't know that man. And what does Jesus do? He knew this was going to happen. He told Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. Yet he still served him. And the last group of people that we see is the other disciples. In Matthew chapter 26, starting in verse 55, it says, at that time, Jesus said to the crowds, have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me, as you would against a robber? Every day I used to sit in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place to fulfill the scriptures of the prophets. Then all the disciples left and fled. Man, I could imagine how hard that would have been. Serving people that you love, putting yourself in that position, and all of them left you alone. That would have been hard, knowing that beforehand that was going to happen. To put yourself in that position and say, you know what? I'm going to serve these people. I'm going to wash their feet. And he did it anyways. But why was it that he did it? He did it, as we saw in John chapter 13, verse 15, as an example for us, so that we can do the same thing as Jesus did. But I want you to think about this. Judas betrayed Jesus. Peter denied Jesus. The other disciples fled and left. How about us? In Romans chapter 5, verse 6, for while we were still helpless, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one would hardly die for a righteous man, though perhaps for the good man, someone would dare even to die. But God demonstrates his own love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Much more than having now been justified by his blood, he shall be saved from the wrath of God through him. For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God through the death of his son, much more, having been reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. We were enemies of Christ. And how was it that he served us? Romans chapter 6. He died for each and every one of us. What an act of service Jesus did. Not only to his disciples, but to people who were enemies. People who didn't deserve it. Did we deserve for Jesus to die on the cross for our sins? We were enemies of him. Yet he came down, made himself uncomfortable, and served each and every one of us, dying on the cross for our sins. In conclusion, we can be faithful in service when we serve without expectation, even when it's uncomfortable, and toward those who do not deserve it or are unfaithful. Jesus did all this to leave us an example for us to do the same. If there's someone today that has not been baptized, Jesus died. He put his life for you and for me so that we can be cleansed of the sins that we've committed. I hope this lesson has been encouraging so that we can serve like the way that Christ served, and we can live our lives the way Christ lived his life. Please stand as we sing.
When Jesus comes to reward his servants,